A silent genocide in Swaziland. The accusation by a South African union. People are dying daily in what is now known as eSwatini's health and hunger crises. The last absolute monarch was expected to hold an election a few days back, but a local party challenged the country's political system, putting brakes on those polls. There's also a financial crisis there. Nurses are protesting over lack of medication and shortage of staff. Who will help the financially strapped nation? To talk to us about this is Dlozi Matuane of the Liberated Metal Workers Union of South Africa, and Mfana Futhi Tsela of the People's United Democratic Movement. A very warm welcome to both of you. These accusations of genocide, what's behind it?
Well, the situation of the crisis in Swaziland has been in existence for a very long time. However, because of mainstream media and the world at large has not been giving much attention to that, it has not been able to suffice or to be out in the public. However, now the situation has escalated to a much worse condition now that there is no medication and there is lack of equipment, whereby people or the population of Swaziland, especially the poor and the working class, just go to hospitals to die, if we are to put it in that sense, noting the fact that even themselves, they cannot even afford, when they are chased away from the hospitals, the medication that they are told to purchase. So in a sense, that's why we said the situation is it's genocide, in that the regime, or Mswati's regime, is deliberately killing the people in Swaziland. That's how we put it, because even the most cruel regimes in the world have never denied people access to health care. You look at war zones and other places like the conflict between Israel and Palestine. You know, they've never denied people access to health care services. But the absolute monarch in Swaziland has actually denied people health care services, and he continues to live his luxurious life, buying 500 million private jets and a wristwatch of 21 million rands.
Would you describe it as a genocide? What's happening there now? Do you think the king is going out of his way to make sure that people don't get the sort of services that they need, the food to survive?
I think the king doesn't think about anybody else other than himself and his family, his many wives and his many children. I think that is what the king has been doing, you know. Like maybe previously the other ones would pretend to care about other people. His father, you know, he used to, for instance, just wear a blanket and pretend. This one is not pretending, you know, like as Dlozi has just said, that in his birthday bash, like just a few months ago, he had a 21 million rand watch, which he was wearing a jacket that is said by the Swazi Observer, which is a newspaper that is effectively owned by him, that it was having like 6 kilograms of diamonds. So, I mean, if you remember, some time back, there was this dictator in Central Africa, Bokassa. Like, Mswati has moved to that sense. And
what's people's response when they can't feed themselves and they see these images and they hear these stories?
I think the amount of repression in Swaziland sometimes, it's so difficult that the people, even though people know and see, but the type of repression, or the way they are oppressed, and the mechanism which is used by the enemy to oppress people or to make.
And how do they oppress them? Just by not?
I think the worst part, I think what happens in Swaziland is that, like, majority of Swazis, they live under what is called Swazi nation land. Swaziland is divided into two. There is a private-owned land and Swazi nation land. Most of the land, about 70% of people in Swaziland, they don't live under municipalities. There's no municipalities, but they live under chiefs. And chiefs are an extension of the monarch. And those are the people which the monarch use to be able to suppress Swazis. So sometimes people, you can be evicted by a chief. There's nothing, there's no recourse, there's nothing you can do. Like for even small things which you can take for granted, like that for other people, like to get, let's say, the residence, the proof of residence. Because people are not like in municipalities. You have to go to the chief, like to, maybe you want to open a bank account. And if you oppose, you are in trouble because the chief will say, you are opposing. For instance, you didn't register.
And I'm sure you can't criticize the chiefs like you can't criticize the king. I mean, you were talking about media and what's not been covered. I mean, the state of the media there, it's not free and fair.
Well, you can say that the media belongs to him. In fact, everything belongs to him. He's even in charge of the state. You know, whatever that he says goes. For the mere fact that a big newspaper in Swaziland, like the one owned by the government in Swaziland, for the mere fact that it can come out boldly and even speak about the government buying a 15 million rand wristwatch, 15 million rand retirement home for the outgoing prime minister, speak about the diamond wristwatch that even Comrade Mfanafuthi just referred to, tells you, and for the fact that those stories are popular in South Africa and we're just
maybe it's for a different audience, maybe it's for an international audience or something, but certainly not.
No, but what I'm trying to say is that we're just next to Swaziland, you know, and for the mere fact that ourselves, we cannot get access to such stories, tells you how Mswati is in charge. People die in Swaziland. You know, you can the police can just kill you for wearing a Budemo T-shirt, for wearing a T-shirt of a union, you know, and those stories are not there in the mainstream media. Hence, we even indicated in our statement that I think the world has been silent for far too long on the Swazi question.
Okay, let me ask you what the world should do, what SADC should do if this is happening, and it has been happening for a while. I think everyone's pretty aware of the abuses committed there, but possibly not to the extent.
I think SADC have got its own guidelines, for instance, what is expected, what is a democratic state, and what is expected, like the elections, how should be conducted. Swaziland doesn't fit within those guidelines. So for them to invite Swaziland to be part of that community of Southern Africa, it's just like, it just makes it's a mockery of the organization SADC, and it just makes, I mean, the fact that they can even make Mswati the chairperson of the organization is just like a disgrace. So we would like SADC, like for instance, like just for its own image, to take action, and Swaziland should be suspended from SADC until Swaziland can just get the very basic rights, the right to freedom of association, freedom of expression, just those basic rights. Even in Zimbabwe, where people have been complaining about the repression and the like, but they still had that basic right that you can belong to MDC, you can belong to ZANU-PF. Swaziland's don't have that, just that basic right. So it's very difficult. I'm not talking about the powers, like, because in Swaziland, all of the powers, the executive, the legislative, and the judicial powers are vested in one man. I'm not moving to that. That is still going to be, that can still be discussed. But the fact that people cannot be able to join a political, to be a member of a political party, or others cannot say something that the authorities cannot like, I think that is a very serious.
And I'm sorry, but we are going to have to leave it there because we run out of time. But it is a big story, and we will certainly revisit it. But thank you for talking us through it, Mafamfuthi Tsela and Dlozani Matwale. Thank you. Now, her dolls and characters are taking girls on trips around the continent. We speak to the creator of the beautiful Akiki doll and stories. This is Tonight with Jane Dutton.